first speaker today is Sharon Doyle. She's the manager of Mobility Plus at York Region Transit, north of Toronto, where she oversees transportation services for people with physical, cognitive, or sensory disabilities that make them unable to use conventional public transit. She has 22 years of experience in the transportation industry and holds a keen insight into the transit accessibility and its community benefits. She's an active supporter of accessibility. She's the vice chair of the Accessibility Committee of CUTA. And without anything further, I give you Sharon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. Certainly, one of the most stubborn opponents you face as a speaker is an audience that has endured a morning's worth of presentations, escaped into a lunch of food and desserts, only to be herded back into their seats to listen to speakers in the dreaded after-lunch spot. Before I tell you our story, I must first familiarize you with the geography of York Region so you will better understand some of the challenges we have in serving our customers. York Region is part of the Greater Toronto Area and is home to 1.3 million people and covers an area of 1,762 square kilometers. It is a mix of both urban communities in the south and rural in the north. 70 different languages are spoken within its borders, and in just 2 decades, York Region's senior population will increase by 148%, almost 4 times faster than the growth rate of the overall population. In addition, it is home to many domicile facilities, with many being in the more rural areas of the region. From societal shifts to family dynamics, from healthcare to housing to transportation and more, there are few areas and services that will remain untouched by these unprecedented demographics. But we must learn how to adapt to the changes with the resources we have. A new service delivery model started 7 years ago with one gentleman named George. George qualified for Mobility Plus because he had a physical disability and used a walker. He was independent and self-sufficient and traveled twice a day from his new group home, located in the middle of the region, to see friends in Toronto. He had been recently relocated from a group home in Toronto and he missed the people he knew. We initially took him to the subway in Toronto using a door-to-door paratransit vehicle, but it was costing the taxpayers of York Region almost $2,000 a week because of the distance and the frequency of travel. Mobility Plus is a public transit service, so he could travel as often as he liked and without restrictions, but we were eager to find out why he would leave in the morning, come back at noon, and then go back down to Toronto again. He told us he missed his friends and wanted to be with them, but they wouldn't give him lunch. So he would come back to his own group home to eat and then go back down after dinner. We knew this wasn't sustainable, and we looked for solutions. Since York Region Transit has a 100% accessible fleet, and we had a rapid transit route that traveled in the direction he was going every 10 minutes, we told George, going forward, we were going to provide a trip just a little bit differently. We picked him up at the residence by the paratransit service and transferred him to the rapid transit route at a major hub. The cost was now less than $200 a week. This became known as a family of services trip. It was important for us to travel train and accompany George on his first conventional trip, and it is a practice we continue today with all of our passengers who are taking conventional transit. A Mobility Plus passenger who is taking conventional transit for the first time is met by a travel trainer who will familiarize the customer with the transit hub and its amenities, where to sit and wait, how to pay, and how to board the bus where they would be most comfortable. George was apprehensive at first, but eventually became so comfortable with the process, he no longer booked the paratransit portion to get to the conventional service, but walked to the bus stop with his walker, close to his residence, and took the conventional bus to the hub. He told us it was much easier, and he didn't have to remember to book, or to wait in a call center queue to check his time or pickup, or even remember to cancel. It gave him freedom to come and go as he pleased. It became apparent through the review of many more of our customers' travel patterns, trip lengths, and travel destinations that many of the trips could be delivered using a variety of YRT Viva accessible services for all or a portion of the trip. And we began moving them over slowly. Each trip had to be scheduled manually by staff, which was very time-consuming, and we realized very quickly we needed an interface between the paratransit scheduling software and the conventional schedules to do this effectively. This is a graphic of how we now provide service. At the bottom of the slide, you will see our direct door-to-door paratransit service for those who cannot take conventional transit. The top is our multimodal trip plan, which uses the conventional transit for all or a portion of the trip. Since the introduction of the new software and the integrated trip planner, Mobility Plus has been able to reduce the average trip length by 17% in the first year, a further 4% in 2015, and a further 2.9% in 2016. Because our service is fully contracted out and Mobility Plus pays by the kilometre, reducing the average trip length is key to managing costs and staying within budget. Mobility Plus has been able to absorb the 10% increase in ridership over the past 2 years with no increase in budget. Shorter paratransit trips allow for additional bookings, all within the same budget envelope. And passengers who wake up in the morning and who can use conventional transit for part of their trip are guaranteed a same-day trip. It truly has been a success story. In 2016 alone, we diverted 120,000 kilometers to the conventional service at a cost diversion of $377,000. And with the opening of the subway in York Region in the near future, we only see the number increasing. York Region Transit continues to be innovative in providing transit to the residents of the region, and we're ready to take it to the next level. We are now testing an app that empowers our paratransit customers, considers their individual needs, and integrates the multimodal trip planner. It will determine if the trip request is a multimodal trip and if the passenger is able to take conventional transit, all by their profile in the system. In addition, it will know if the customer has been travel trained at the location they have chosen. If they have not, the system alerts, dispatch, and the passenger is met by the travel trainer. In 2016, Mobility Plus successfully travel trained over 600 of our customers who now take conventional transit. I will touch further on travel training in a few minutes. This brings us to the next passenger I'm going to talk about. I attended a meeting of people whose clients were disadvantaged and isolated, and a gentleman talked about 2 young men who lived in a group home he was responsible for in the north of the region. These 2 young men were just a few of the many examples. Many of these group homes were built in rural areas for reasons we all know, and were a challenge to serve. These 2 young men in particular had secured jobs in an industrial area further south in the region, and were beginning to turn their lives around. They wanted to work and they wanted to live independently outside of the group home. Once a month they worked a shift from 4 p.m. until midnight. The problem was there was no transit going north at that time to take them home, so they stayed in Tim Hortons all night until the first bus in the morning. Of all my years in transit, that story hit me the hardest. I wondered to myself how long I would sit in a coffee shop all night waiting for a ride before I gave up. I don't think it would have been long. But I also knew we could help them. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act requires paratransit to have the same hours as the latest conventional route. So we had vehicles on the road able to respond. And so it began. With the success of our family of services approach, it was determined that the software could be utilized to provide on-demand trips where a conventional route was not warranted, but people's needs still had to be met. This was the exact opposite of what we had been doing. We had been integrating our paratransit riders onto conventional services, and now we were integrating our conventional riders onto our paratransit vehicles. Any logos that identified the Mobility Plus vehicles as paratransit vehicles were removed, and all vehicles were branded with the YRT Viva logo. An extensive marketing plan was created to communicate the change to the customer. This is YRT's proposed on-demand strategy. Some of the zones are in place now, and others are there for the future. I won't dwell on it too long, but you can see the zones vary in size depending on the population. Each zone has to have at least one transit route to transfer to. In the rural area where there were no bus stops, we needed the flexibility to pick up at a curb address. We looked at having just one type of on-demand service, but it became evident very quickly that we had to be flexible, and so did the software. The objectives of the on-demand strategy align with York Region's Transportation Master Plan and YRT Viva's 2016 to 2020 strategic plan. These objectives will guide future service delivery to low-demand areas and help bridge the isolation some rural residents face today. The on-demand strategy objectives include improving service efficiency, increase ridership, expand service area coverage, promote the use of public transit, connect customers to main transit corridors, and continue to develop innovative transit services. We are now currently providing trips to over 1,700 on-demand passengers monthly using existing Mobility Plus staff for call taking, booking, and dispatching, and we needed to find a better way. Technology is key for this strategy to be successful. We determined that more sophisticated software, which included the desirable features listed here, would help to increase efficiency and allow us to expand our on-demand service. The integrated trip planner was a must, and so was a mobile application. It was also important for us to commingle or integrate our para and on-demand passengers within the same vehicle where possible. Our scheduling software provider is currently working on developing the on-demand platform that will help move us forward. Our riders will have the ability to book a ride through the same mobile app currently being tested for our paratransit riders, although their profiles will not be as extensive.